Well, it's been almost a year since Donald Trump's comeback victory where he won the White House a second time in November of 2024. And the debate over what is MAGA, what does Make America Great Again mean in a policy sense, is raging as the end of the first year of Donald Trump's second presidency comes almost to a close. Now, Tucker Carlson posted, quote, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, and Mark Levin have declared themselves the heirs of MAGA. Before Wikipedia erases the recent past and people start to believe this, a reality check with MTG. So Tucker's referring, of course, to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who he hosted for a long, wide-ranging conversation on what MAGA actually is. Who defines MAGA? Who has the true claim? Who is the real heir to MAGA? I'm going to show you some clips from that. First, of course, make sure to subscribe over at undercurrents.tv. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and of course over on YouTube as well. Don't forget that. Now, let's go ahead and roll this clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene defining, or Marjorie Taylor Greene arguing, basically that her version of America First, because she posted this video on her own congressional X account where she said, some people in the America First movement want to take credit and take over, but I sleep easy knowing my voting record tells the truth. She says, my district knows I've never changed. I have an unwavering commitment to push the America First agenda President Trump ran on. All right, so let's take a listen here to how Marjorie Taylor Greene makes the argument that her MAGA is true MAGA.
What does it feel like to be the person who stood consistently with the series of principles, these 5 principles, from 2016 to present, one of the only ones, to see people who hated Donald Trump, still hate Donald Trump, try to read you out of the movement and take it over?
Oh, I can tell you, I feel great. I sleep perfect every single night. My voting record is a direct reflection of me standing with those policies and never wavering or changing anything. When I go back home to my district, Tucker, which I've been here a lot because Mike Johnson won't bring us back to work. But when I'm back in my district, I go to the grocery store, I get hugs, I get hellos, I go to restaurants, I get thank yous. And I go around as a normal person in my district, and I really love it because these people know me. And they know the hard work that I put in for them, and they know I haven't changed one single bit. When I'm in Washington, D.C., it's a completely different matter. The Republicans that I work with, they literally know that they are having to serve this agenda as long as the president is there in office, and they look at him like a speed bump. Many of them can't wait to get him out of the way. And so they can just go back to doing business as usual. And I find that repulsive, absolutely repulsive.
I know I've talked about this before, but I really do think Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the more interesting members of Congress and actually one of the more interesting actors in the MAGA movement, period. She's somebody who lived a fairly normal life, helming her family's fairly successful small business in Georgia, and got activated in politics as Obamacare activated many people on the right in politics, the fight over the Affordable Care Act. She saw it affecting her family's small business, and she was really inspired by Donald Trump. And she got involved in the MAGA movement, had some wild social media posts in her past. She overcame that, got elected to Congress, and I think, has been in fights with all kinds of, she basically got pushed out of the House Freedom Caucus, which is, tends to be like the most MAGA part of Congress. And how MAGA is defined has never been perfectly clear, other than I think there's a very clear solution. If ever you're trying to understand what true MAGA actually is, you just have to look at what Donald Trump is doing. Marjorie Taylor Greene is arguing, and Tucker Carlson is arguing, both of them are essentially arguing with those people, as Tucker framed it, like Mark Levin, like Lindsey Graham, who have won fights for what defines MAGA in the past with Donald Trump. But so too has Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson won fights over what actually constitutes MAGA as well. For example, being tough on Benjamin Netanyahu. That's something where Trump has sided roughly in the last couple of weeks, at least, with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene. When Donald Trump decided to greenlight the Iran strike, he was clearly siding with the Mark Levins and Lindsey Grahams, who are in this tug of war for what actual MAGA is. On tariffs, fairly obvious where Donald Trump comes down on defining America first and defining MAGA. On Ukraine, up in the air. One day Donald Trump is saying that maybe he's going to let Ukraine off the leash, basically, and go all out on attacking and escalating with Russia. The next day, he's saying Zelensky needs to make more concessions. So that ball is still up in the air. Here's another one. Health insurance. This is where Marjorie Taylor Greene has broken with her party in recent weeks once again. So for her, the big break was starting to criticize the Republican Party's Israel policy. She's broken a bit on Ukraine, but on this government shutdown, Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, listen, it is true that people are going to see spikes in their health insurance premiums if these 2021 Biden-era tax credits expire at the end of the year. Democrats are asking for an expansion of those tax credits. They are also asking for non-citizens, not the same as illegal immigrants, but non-citizens in every case, to have access to the Obamacare exchanges and to still be able to, they're asking for higher federal reimbursements, let's put it this way. They're asking for higher federal reimbursements for emergency treatment federal Medicaid reimbursements for emergency treatment that includes non-citizens at hospitals around the country. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying her constituents are going to see premiums increase. If Republicans don't have a long-term free market solution to spiking Obamacare premiums and keep saying, trust us down the road, we'll fix the problem, you're asking her constituents, as she puts it, to wait and swallow these higher premiums just with this thin promise that Republicans at some point will fix the entire broken healthcare system and make it more affordable. It's a pretty reasonable claim. What does Donald Trump think about that? We still don't fully know, because right now Democrats haven't come to the table on healthcare for non-citizens. So Republicans have basically no incentive to cooperate with Democrats who are withholding their votes. So we're going to, in the premium extended version of today's episode, break down that, because Marjorie Taylor Greene has more to say on shutdown politics that completely cut against what her party is saying right now, and they're well worth discussing. But on that question, which is a populist question, I mean, what does the populist left talk about all of the time? Health insurance, healthcare, health insurance, healthcare, drug prices. They hammer it, and very effectively, without a Republican response for a long time, because repeal and replace was the Republican healthcare solution when they had a chance to do it. Didn't work out, and they've basically dropped the issue ever since because there's no consensus replacement. On that, Donald Trump said when he was campaigning in 2016, everybody would have health insurance. You can make a pretty strong argument that Marjorie Taylor Greene is closer to that version of Donald Trump. What about on crypto? Marjorie Taylor Greene voted against some of the crypto legislation because she said she believed it was thrusting us closer and closer to a central bank digital currency. What about on Venezuela? You now have an open regime change operation, if Lindsey Graham is to be believed, in the Caribbean. According to the New York Times, Trump has greenlit CIA operations on the ground in Venezuela. There's been a massive military buildup, and so far roughly 35 people killed without much proof given by the U.S. government that the strikes were legal, that they targeted people who were known to be engaging in drug trafficking at the time that they were struck. Where were the boats going? We covered this a couple of days ago. Senator Rand Paul has laid all of this out and asked for answers from the Pentagon and the administration, but is that America first? This is a question that's completely up in the air. What is MAGA? And I think that's why you have Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to weigh in on this tug of war right now as Trump enters the second year of his second presidency, because the first year has been enormously consequential, right? In terms of big priorities, Donald Trump got his one big beautiful bill passed. Donald Trump has seen, has overseen by some definitions, mass deportations. I mean, this is record level deportation. Self-deportations are by some counts in the millions. Deportations from law enforcement north of 500,000 right now, record levels. He's basically closed the border. And he has achieved a fragile, very fragile, but a peace deal in Ukraine. In Gaza. Ukraine is on the table next. So as all of that is now, to listen to how Tucker framed it, being decided, being defined in one way or the other, it looks a lot like the Tuckers and Marjorie Taylor Greenes are threatened by the Mark Levins, Lindsey Grahams, and all of these major CEOs who are swarming Donald Trump, paying for his big East Wing renovation, paying for his big East Wing ballroom, striking deals with him on AI research, AI development, AI cooperation, all of that. It sounds like they're fairly concerned that MAGA will be defined into the future in a way that doesn't represent the MAGA that Donald Trump first introduced back in 2015. And what happens next? So Donald Trump, assuming he leaves office as normal when he's done with his presidency in 2028, that means the next Republican presidential candidate that wants to be the heir to MAGA, Donald Trump is in all likelihood going to control what the heir to MAGA is. Now, if it's one of his children, that's easier. But if it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, where does J.D. Vance, when he's not working for Donald Trump as vice president, fall on the Venezuela strikes or future versions of the Venezuela strikes or regime change? Because we know where Marco Rubio stands, and that could be a source of tension between them. Where does J.D. Vance, where is J.D. Vance ultimately going to come down on healthcare? Where is J.D. Vance or where is Marco Rubio ultimately going to come down on healthcare? Where are they going to come down on crypto? They are right now awash in crypto money that has followed Donald Trump specifically. Vance is obviously a Silicon Valley veteran who is very friendly with the crypto industry, but where does Marco Rubio come down on that? Does Marjorie Taylor Greene run for president and push them in different directions? You can see why some of these questions that are so up in the air are being treated as definitive, and everybody is right now racing to settle the definition and to show what the definition is. And Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson are correct that the crypto industry and Lindsey Graham are not representatives of the MAGA. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, would know because she literally comes from the grassroots MAGA movement. They're not representative of the MAGA that Donald Trump represented himself back in 2015 when he knocked down like dominoes every other Republican candidate, even the ones who had major hype and money behind them. Now, Donald Trump, at the end of the day, though, is the man who controls MAGA. He's the one who defines what Make America Great Again is. So this is ultimately a fight for Donald Trump. This is a battle to win over Donald Trump. And even at the IVF announcement last week, I got to ask Trump a question because I was new media pool that day. And I asked him, what is your message? I found this so interesting. I said, what is your message to people in your own coalition, conservatives, who oppose IVF for religious reasons? And you know, the couple of times I've ever asked Trump a question or other politicians a question, but especially Trump, he likes to talk. Even when he's yelling at reporters, he likes to talk to them. he moved on from that question so quickly. Broke eye contact, moved along. Of course, I had multiple follow-ups, but he went right to one of the reporters standing next to me. And he said, basically, it's as pro-life as you can possibly get. He said this IVF policy encouraging companies to offer IVF benefits and encouraging the government to greenlight these treatments and to have most favored nation status on these drugs. He said that's the most pro-life thing that you can imagine. And what he was doing there is exactly what Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene are doing here. They're trying to define the terms. And it's clever, right? Trump defining pro-life, defining IVF as pro-life. It's not going to convince the many people I asked him about who had already, as the press conference was happening, come out against his policy and done so, very lovingly and affectionately because they still stand behind Donald Trump. But what is MAGA's position on IVF? What is MAGA's position actually on abortion? Because Donald Trump himself has come down on different sides of that, as opposed to J.D. Vance. If you have sort of Orthodox Catholics like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as the heirs to MAGA, that's going to look different than if you have Eric Trump probably, or Donald Trump Jr., or maybe Lindsey. Well, Lindsey Graham's actually fairly pro-life, but if you have sort of a New York Republican stepping into Trump's shoes, what does the Republican Party's stance on abortion look like into the future? These things are up for grabs, and I think this conversation between Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a preview of what's to come in the next couple of years. And I just want to say we don't know where this is going to end. One thing I think we can predict pretty clearly is that, let's say that 30% of the Republican Party, it might be more like 50% of the Republican Party that's diehard MAGA. I'm talking about people who go to rallies. I'm talking about people who, Trump could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, as he once said, and they would still support him. Oftentimes, by the way, that's not because it's something the media still gets wrong. It's not because they love Donald Trump so much, it's because they still are so distrustful of establishment Republicans and the left. I think it's pretty clear these normal people who don't live and breathe politics but really like Donald Trump will follow Donald Trump's lead on a lot of these issues. And that's why J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, it's not only just because they work for him, they've attached himself to Trump, A, because I think they've had sincere ideological conversions, but B, because they really, they know that there's a big chunk of the Republican Party that will follow the person who has Trump's blessing. So that's why it's so unpredictable, right? Because it all ends up weighing on Trump. And when it comes to Ukraine, for example, one day Trump is being called a Putin apologist. The next day, he's, being too nice to Zelensky. And, as some people on the right would call it. So this is up in the air. And the shutdown battle has become an early skirmish. And I'm going to get to one more Marjorie Taylor Greene clip here that is fascinating. So if you want to watch that, make sure to subscribe over at undercurrents.tv for the full extended version of this episode. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you behind the paywall.